Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Monday, June 16th, 2025. Alastair Crooke will be here with us in just a minute on who's to blame for Israel's attacks, Benjamin Netanyahu or Donald Trump. But first this. While the markets are giving us whiplash, have you seen the price of gold? It's soaring. In the past 12 months, gold has risen to more than $3,000 an ounce. I'm so glad I bought my gold. It's not too late for you to buy yours. The same experts that predicted gold at $3,200 an ounce now predict gold at $4,500 or more in the next year. What's driving the price higher? Paper currencies. All around the world, they are falling in value. Big money is in panic as falling currencies shrink the value of their paper wealth. That's why big banks and billionaires are buying gold in record amounts. As long as paper money keeps falling, they'll keep buying, and gold will keep rising. So do what I did. Call my friends at Lear Capital. You'll have a great conversation, and they'll send you very helpful information. Learn how you can store gold in your IRA tax and penalty free or have it sent directly to your doorstep. There's zero pressure to buy and you have a 100% risk-free purchase guarantee. It's time to see if gold is right for you. Call 800-511-4620, 800-511-4620, or go to LearJudgeNap.com and tell them your friend the judge sent you. Alastair Crooke, good day to you, my friend. Thank you for joining us, and of course, welcome here. Last month in Saudi Arabia, President Trump condemned neocons, denounced Western militarism and intervention into the Middle East, and proclaimed himself the president of peace. What happened?
Just wasn't true, and it was deception. And we really have two deceptions really going on at the moment. And what we saw that took place on Friday, unlucky Friday the 13th, with the attack on Iran by Israel. This was conditioned, if you like, made possible because the Witkoff and Trump and others had suggested that there would be no attack, no, if you like, military action by Israel at all, while the talks continued. There'd been a row between Netanyahu and Trump, and that Netanyahu had agreed to no attacks during this period. And of course, that was all fake. There was no actually row, because they were all totally in agreement that what should happen next should be a complete shock, a psychic shock, if you like. There's a word for it that the intelligence services are using freely, which is a synergistic shock, synergy, meaning from having doing a surprise attack that took out the commanders of the military force, the line commanders, 8 of them, and also at the same time there was a cyber attack on the air defenses. Now, I think Israel thought it was going to last a lot longer, but the Air Force technicians, the Iranian Air Force technicians, worked really hard on this, and 8 hours later, the great claims of Israel that they had an open road to the Tehran were completely overturned. And since then, we've seen very strong performance by the air defense systems of Iran. And this is also, if you like, was part of this process that not only was it supposed to be a shock, it was supposed to be such a severe shock. I think it was modeled probably on the Hezbollah model. And what was this going to do? It was actually going to collapse the regime. And so they thought, and clearly Trump was in this, and his team was in it, because we know that this was a year in preparation. So obviously been talked about. We know it's a year in preparation because the Israelis say it was a year in preparation. The security force they say it was a year in preparation, and therefore it was fully coordinated. And the other part of it, of course, which shows what's going on, was that the other part of it was they brought in to Iran various drones, broken up in trucks, wooden trucks, and we're going to play the same, if you like, playbook that they did with Russia against the strategic bombers in Russia, that these drones would suddenly emerge from the backs of vans or from roofs that opened, controlled remotely, and these would attack the self-defense system, the air defenses of Iran. Well, that play only lasted for about 8 hours. And yes, all of the commanders happened to be, there was supposed to be an exercise going to happen over the weekend. So all of those military commanders happened to be in one command room, an underground command room at the time, and that the Israelis were aware of it. It wasn't a secret exercise. It was one with the Russians and others that was well publicized. And they got all of them, 8 of them, and then they killed, if you like, the Russian, the Iranian nuclear scientists. All of those who are civilians, not military people, were killed at home by bombing with their families. So this was supposed to really, actually knock the whole system off balance, losing their main line of command, losing their air defense, losing these scientists was supposed to create such a psychic shock that the whole of the government would be destabilized and off balance, rather as Hezbollah was off balance. And it was off balance for a period after the loss of Hassan Nasrallah and the Hezbollah leadership. And they thought then what with also the second layer of this was going to be sabotage. They introduced, from outside of the country, groups and saboteurs, mostly from the MEK, the Mujahideen al-Khalq, into attacking and placing bombs. So many of these things that you see today are not actually fired by aircraft. These are car bombs and bombs there. However, what was quite striking was that Iran recovered very quickly. It recovered its command structures quickly. It recovered its air defense system, and then decided and made plans for its own self-defense. So what we're seeing, I just want to underline, what we're seeing is really what has happened is a complete attack on a paradigm of thinking, on the sense of, if you like, the invulnerability of Israel as a technical giant, of Israel whose future must be assured, who has the backing of the West, that this was something that it was a perception that has underlain politics for many years, and suddenly the whole paradigm was being cracked because Iran decided that they were going to retaliate and retaliate fully, and also then put it into practice very quickly and have been doing so ever since. So this paradigm change is going to change the whole balance of politics, geopolitics, I believe, everywhere, not just in the region, but of course, Russia. If you read RIA Novosti today is saying, well, quite clearly, this was a rehearsal for us again. The tactics that we saw on the ground, with the tactics we've seen, the intelligence services, the Mossad, the CIA, MI6, all of them using, they're all one pattern. And this is a pattern that is being exported and used. It's obviously something that has been deliberated on for a year or more. We saw that in the attacks on the strategic bombers in Russia. And the purpose of it is all the same. The purpose to weaken Iran, to weaken Russia, to attack Russia, to divide Russia from China, and eventually allow the United States to pivot towards China. So Russia have come very clearly to that conclusion, and so they are acting accordingly. So what does it all mean? I think, if you allow me just a few more minutes to say,
Sure.
the things that matter then, we had a surprise attack that worked for a short while. There's no doubt it was a surprise, and it took Iran was a shock to Iran, but they recovered quite quickly. So now we're in a war, and Iran is using very powerful missiles, some of them hypersonic. Initially, they were using older missiles, and then they've been advancing them, and we're seeing that effectively this has now proved that the air defenses now of Israel have been largely ineffective. The main air defense layers of Israel are just not working, are not stopping the new attacks. And they are targeting very clearly. Now it is turned, and this is a strategic shift that has been made by Iran. They're targeting strategic sites inside, including the Ministry of Defense sites, the research bureaus, the missile production facilities, some energy, the gas at Haifa, the oil the refinery at Haifa. All of these have been, and the damage is now severe. So where are we? I think really, although the details of the military situation are sort of lost in a fog of war in some cases, but really one has to look at two things, I think, to decide, where it is going. And one of it is popular support. And I think that this whole exercise was based on the conviction of Trump and Netanyahu together, thinking that Iran is weak, that it is ripe for a regime change, that a big sudden shock of the decapitation, of losing its air defenses, was going to bring about a big popular uprising and antagonism against Iran. Well, that hasn't happened. In fact, if anything, it's the opposite. There's extreme anger in Iran. There are demonstrations in Iran, but they're all demonstrations against the United States and Israel. And the country has coalesced around the leadership, and the leadership has coalesced in a very significant way. And so we are seeing, therefore, a popular support, a growing popular support. In Israel, on the other hand, Israelis perhaps have not had that history of sufferings that Iranians have had, and of forbearance and resolve. And clearly, some of the Israeli commentators and the security commentators are questioning how many days can Israel see the situation like this, with huge destruction in Tel Aviv. I mean, that's where most of the security elements are cited, in big urban areas like Haifa or in Tel Aviv. But there are pictures and images of whole apartment blocks being knocked down, or of houses being damaged. No one knows exactly the figures. There's a complete news blackout from Israel. Almost nothing gets through in terms of the detail of what's happened. So now this is where we are. And the long answer to your question is that, first of all, the first deception was the one of Witkoff and Trump saying that on the 13th, this was Sunday, there were going to be new negotiations, and the negotiations were making progress and they were looking good. And all of that was to prepare for this, if you like, the shock attack that was thought it could actually bring down the government in Iran. But the other one, which Ronen Bergman, the prominent Israeli commentator, senior security official, is saying, is that General Michael Kurilla throughout this period was telling the security officials that, oh yes, it was assured America would join in. And also, not only would they join in and support Israel in this attack on Iran, but he was also suggesting that it was that America would release its mother of all bombs, the MOAB, the 11-ton bunker buster bomb that can only be carried by B-1 or B-2 American bomber, and that they would shortly be seeing all of these big bombers being sent to Diego Garcia, and that for sure the United States would be participating in the attacks on Iran. Well, that hasn't happened so far. I'm not saying it won't happen, that Trump will not join in, but I'm saying that the prospects are not clear, because what has become absolutely apparent, as I've been saying and others on your program have been saying, Israel is just not capable of destroying the nuclear sites of Iran. They cannot do it with the equipment, the bombs that they have. It's not possible to destroy it without the United States. So without destroying the nuclear program, really, Israel is just reduced to what was always called the Dahi option, which is to go and attack civilians in Tehran. And you've heard Katz, the defense minister, saying, we'll make Tehran burn. This is the Dahi option, where you just attack civilian areas, bomb hospitals, facilities, in order to put pressure on the people to turn against their leaders. Well, it's not working so far, but there's a long way to go in this war, and so we will see what the next steps turn out to be. Sorry for such a long description.
Oh, no. Please don't be sorry. It was a brilliant and gifted, terrific, up-to-date summary of where things stand now. What kind of, there doesn't seem to be any dispute, but that the president personally participated in the deception, the nonsense about snubbing Netanyahu, the nonsense about going to the Middle East and avoiding Israel. What damage did Donald Trump personally do to American diplomacy in the future? I mean, stated differently, who would believe anything the president or his diplomats say in negotiations if he's going to end up, we'll play the clip in a minute, killing the people with whom he's negotiating?
No, it is already obvious, and you can see this reflected directly. If you look at the statements by China and of Russia at the UN Security Council emergency meeting, and they were absolutely clear. This was illegal. It was against the UN Charter. It was against the standards of values of the diplomatic world. It was against international law, and they condemned it utterly. And this will have an impact because there's a thing under Article 51 of the United Nations, which means it's called the collective defense, and that Iran can appeal to the collective defense procedures, so that countries like China, states like Russia, like Pakistan, have an absolute legitimate reason and are obliged to come to the help of Iran. So, already we've seen a Chinese cargo plane arriving in Tehran, Pakistan, and there is very strong reporting suggesting Pakistan has already sent missiles across the Baluch border into Iran to support Iran in this case. So I think that is the consequence, that there is now a complete settled position. It's going to, that China and Russia have taken such an unrelenting stand on this program is crippling for America, its credibility and its ability to do wider diplomacy.
Do we know the nature and extent of American and British planning and aid in the execution? I mean, was it just this deceptive dance that Donald Trump perpetrated, or were MI6 and CIA seriously working with Mossad?
Yes, it's quite clear this is the new pattern of the intelligence services, this synergy that they are trying to get of getting all branches of intelligence and sabotage and terrorism working jointly together. And this is their new pattern. I think it was some time ago they started agreeing to move to what they call an asymmetric pattern of warfare against China, against Russia, against all of its enemies. And this is the pattern that we see, and clearly it is closely coordinated between the Western intelligence services, very closely.
Do you believe the reports in the West this morning that Prime Minister Netanyahu asked President Trump for permission to assassinate the Ayatollah, and President Trump declined to give that permission? It's hard for me to believe Netanyahu asking for permission from anybody, but what's your view on this?
No, I don't think so. And it, not by Netanyahu personally, because people don't believe much what he said, but people in the security establishment in Israel. And many of them are deeply skeptical about this whole operation and deeply worried about where it's going to end up for Israel. Have said very clearly, no, this never happened. I mean, there was no sense of that. I mean, of course, you know, decapitation, including the supreme leader, would have a devastating effect in Iran. But I mean, first of all, you know, the question is, could they do it? And is that what they would want? I mean, clearly one part of this pattern after the decapitation and the shock and the psychological shock that was being inflicted was that we've seen, you know, all the deployment, some of whom have been captured, of Mossad agents, MEK officials and operatives, going in and placing car bombs to pretend it was Israeli missiles that were striking Iran, when it wasn't. It was car bombs set by individuals in it. And at other parts where you've seen attacks claimed across Iran, many of those were drones, and they seem to have been drones that were being launched from the north, from Azerbaijan, in the direction of the Caspian into it. And then these are sort of projected. And as I say, we're in a fog of war, deep information war. So we have to be very careful of claims. But it looks as if many of these things were actually drones with quite small warheads that were being fired from out of Azerbaijan to give the impression that Israel had a much greater reach of its air power. In fact, it's not actually in Iranian airspace at all at these times. It has drones in the airspace, but its aircraft are mostly sitting or outside the airspace and doing standoff attacks where that's possible.
Before we go, it sounds to me like the euphoria that the pro-Zionist folks manifested on Friday has dissipated.
True. Yes. And this is why suddenly there's alarm. And I'm not at all, wouldn't be at all surprised that calls going out to Trump and saying, you know, we're in a mess and what are we going to do about it? how are we going to get out of this mess? But I don't think Iran is going to accommodate that. I think that they have moved away from strategic patience and that they are engaged now in a war to demilitarize Israel against its military structures, rather like Putin is engaged in a war to demilitarize Ukraine. So now Iran has made a decision yesterday that it is going to attack hard and it is going to demilitarize Israel. I can't tell you if that will be successful, but that is what is intended, and I don't think they're about to back down into a truce or into some form of ceasefire, and certainly not until they have reached their objectives will there be talks again with the Americans. So this has been a big failure.
Here is, before we go, Alastair, here is a clip from June 13 from your longtime friend and colleague, Professor Mohammad Marandi, who will be on the show with us at 2 o'clock Eastern this afternoon. Very clear, very precise, and I think very accurate. Chris, cut number one.
We were at the negotiating table. It was Trump that conspired with Netanyahu to attack Iran. This is how you twist the truth. You shouldn't invite me because you're easily exposed. Iran was negotiating. Initially, Trump had one position, and so did Witkoff. And then they flipped and said no enrichment. And then they continued the negotiations. And the night before the attack, Trump said that we don't want war. And then after the attack, he said, we're all for it. And you're saying Iran? Is Iran going to come back to the negotiating table? The audacity. Come on. Be a bit, show at least a bit of integrity. A bit of integrity will help.
Okay.
I'm going to guess you agree with that. I mean, the evidence is manifest.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was a big gamble. It was a big gamble that they could cause a sort of a major collapse, a regime change in Iran. And it looks as if it hasn't worked. And instead of which, it is Israel itself that's coming under huge pressure. And its populace is beginning to say, where are we? What's next? Where is this leading? Are we going to lose more of our homes and more of our living standards as Tehran is, if you like, continues the attacks?
I want to play one more clip because I said that I would. Dana Bash of CNN was apparently given a brief interview with the president. I think it was on the telephone and she wasn't permitted to record it, but she did call into her CNN colleagues immediately after the conversation she had with President Trump to report what he said. And it is in this conversation, again, unrecorded, we're going by her notes and her memory, that the president boasted that we killed the people with whom we're negotiating. Chris, cut number 12.
And then he went on to say this: Iran should have listened to me when I said, you know, I gave them, I don't know if you know this, but I gave them a 60-day warning, and today is day 61. And then he said they, meaning Iran, should now come to the table to make a deal before it's too late. And then he said something really noteworthy. He said, the people I was dealing with are dead, the hardliners, to which I just wanted to underscore. So what you're saying is Israel has now killed the people who you were dealing with. And he said very sarcastically, they didn't die of the flu. They didn't die of COVID.
I don't know how you reply to that, Alastair.
It's not worthy of a reply.
Right. Thank you, my dear friend. You need never apologize for your lectures. They are brilliant, gifted, and nowhere else to be found. Thank you so much. We may have to call on you again this week. God only knows what's going to happen. We deeply appreciate every piece of information and analysis you've given us, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you, my dear friend.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Always a pleasure, Dr.
Of course. Thank you. Coming up later today, our usual Monday schedule with two surprises. At 10 o'clock this morning on All of This, Ray McGovern. At 11:30 this morning on All of This, Larry Johnson. At 1 this afternoon on all of this, Scott Ritter. And at 2 this afternoon from Tehran, Professor Sayad Mohammad Marandi, the former advisor to the Iran nuclear program. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.